Okay, going back, though, they even had geologists working on it in World War II. They're thinking about using a tsunami bomb on Japan. Oh, yeah, that's the 40s. So that is coming up. Also, we have an article, and really it was going to be an open letter, but it turned into an article, and we're going back to Nomi here in a moment, at Infowars.com, and it asked the question, is Apple evil now that Steve Jobs is leaving? And I'll probably shoot a video in the next few days. It's an open letter to Steve Jobs because I know a lot about Apple, a lot about Microsoft, a lot about Google. And let me tell you, it is not as trendy and liberal as they would have you believe. It's a big part of the conditioning of the population. So the article's up there, is Apple evil? Going back to Nomi Prins, the former managing director at Goldman Sachs, something's got to give, Nomi. Just in your gut or in your political savvy, do you think they're going to get away with this? I mean, sure, they've got the military, the government, the so-called mainstream media, but at a certain point, is the system at large just going to let a handful of banking families completely wreck the entire global economy?
The optimistic side of me wants to say no, but the problem is that to get to a point where we are so wrecked because of this that there is absolutely no alternative but to slap these banks back, to let the ones fail that need to fail, to break up the speculative aspects of them to the ones that actually deal with like real people and real mortgages and real small business loans and actually create productive capital to grow this country. I think we're not at that point yet where it's so fractured, and that's a crazy thing to say, I know, after what we've seen over the last 2 years, but I think it's going to get a lot worse. When you don't fix the problem, you continue to throw money at it, to gloss over it, to make it seem as if it's gone away with how fractured and bad these banks are for the rest of our economy, it continues to fester, and unfortunately I think it's going to get worse before it even has the possibility of getting better. I would like to believe that the more that we know as individuals about what is actually going on, the less we will stand for it, and that between that being armed with information and anger and a desire to change this with things unfortunately getting worse for us, that somewhere we reach a situation where it does change. But I'll tell you, the guys in Washington, both parties, this is whoever is running what, they are so invested, and I mean invested with their own money, invested with their philosophies, invested with who they do business for and how, that I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. And going back to Bank of America and Buffett, again, Buffett was the guy who invested also in Goldman, and today in Bank of America, one of the other things that happened today in Bank of America is that the one attorney general who was looking into all the fraud that was committed with respect to foreclosures and robo-signing and everything else that not just hurts people facing foreclosure, but anyone who's trying to sell a house. This documentation stuff isn't even just about foreclosures, but all the stuff banks have lost and defrauded people of has just gotten removed from dealing with settling the case. So those kind of signs show me that this is still, unfortunately, going on and getting worse.
That's right. Anybody that tries to oppose these people gets destroyed. Nomi, thank you. All right, finishing up with former managing director at Goldman Sachs, Nomi Prins. Nomi, you got a new book coming out in October talking about Black Tuesday, and you're saying we could end up having one of those by October. But you were finishing up by saying we need to stand behind investigators at state and federal level that do try to go up against the incredibly arrogant creatures. I mean, we've seen a couple years ago on Lair NewsHour, Greenspan say, we're above the law, government has no jurisdiction, we can do whatever we want, we're our own branch of government when they're not government. We've seen Bernanke say gold is not money. We've seen Bernanke say, I won't tell you where the trillions went, some of it to him himself, just like with Paulson. We've seen, on top of that, Bernanke say, we'll just print money. We've seen Greenspan go on Meet the Press and say, we won't default, we'll just print money. And that's why even Goolsbee, big skull and bones Obama globalist, turned red. He actually blushed and smiled and looked like he was about to cough or spit something up because it was so outrageous. They're telling the Chinese, we're not going to hyperinflate, we're not going to hyperinflate. They are hyperinflating. And here he is just arrogantly saying it. I mean, these guys act like they are God. I mean, they just waddle around a bunch of chicken neck, corrupt old men, ruining our dollar, ruining our future, and I've had enough of them.
No, and we all, I think we all have, and that's why as we were saying before the break, I think everyone, listening to your show, everyone out there who is looking for information and wherever it comes from, whoever is providing the truth, whether they call themselves in a certain party but they're different from their party, whether they're individuals, whether they're attorney generals who are like out there relative to like the other 49 that are basically, continuing to support this corrupt financial system, whatever it might be. I feel it's our obligation to support those individual voices because they don't get support. Obviously, the mainstream media isn't really supporting this. They're supporting the notion that what's good for Wall Street is good for Main Street, which we know isn't the case. The notion that what's going to go happen in Jackson Hole tomorrow with Ben Bernanke, is it going to do a QE3 or not, and putting so much emphasis on what that could mean. When any of the other QEs have done nothing, having zero rates have done nothing, because if they're not used to create productive capital for the rest of the Main Street economy, they are not helpful. They are only floating the financial system in the corrupt manners in which it operates, and that is something that has to stop for all of our goods. And so I just continue to feel that the people who are out there talking about this stuff, bringing up these issues, really should be listened to. Agree or not agree, at least examine what they're saying and realize that there are alternative opinions on any spectrum, in any belief, that are at least showing the corruption that's in this financial system and the devastation that it does for most of the general people in the country and in the world, and that has to change and that has to stop. And we, unfortunately, have to be the voices from the ground up, because the voices in Washington and the voices, the people that are running the show, don't care.
Well, that's the truth, and then some. They actually love wrecking society, love consolidating it, and think their police state's going to save them. They can just blow something up, say terrorists did it, everybody grandstand around them and say, "Oh, please save me, Bernanke, from the terrorists." It's truly disgusting how transparent they are when you're aware of them. Nomi Prins, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.